It's time for part 2 of the list, baby. Let's go! Alright, time to get to the fun part of the list, the rankings that I absolutely love. Like last time, this is all my opinion, so if you think a character deserves higher or lower, please discuss in the comments below. And once again, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to know when I make new videos and to help me with the YouTube algorithm. Now with that out of the way, here are the top 8, let's track your backstories. Oh boy. It's time to start off with some pure pain. Yeah, I actually did that. But trust me when I say that choosing who was at number 8 was a really tough decision. I mean it when I say that the rest of the stories on this list are great. Sentaro's is no exception, but there's one huge problem I have with it that's hard to ignore. Far from the outskirts of Aten City lies an isolated island. Here, Onis and humans have pure fear for each other and have been like this for a while. The two opposite forces built villages atop mountains separated by a valley with a river flushing through it. The river created a natural barrier so that no Oni or human would cross into the other's territory. However, the story of Zentaro starts off with a baby, one of human skin, but with horns on his forehead, left at said river barrier. An elderly couple one night went to the riverbank, hearing this baby's cries at the dead of night, and brought them home. The two knew how hard life would be for a half-Oni, not really having a home to live in. But never being able to have a child of their own, they took the risk of keeping the baby in hopes of possibly helping him escape the island's bigoted ways. It was then the baby was given the name Zentaro. Zentaro had a hard yet simple life. While in the streets of the village, he would put on wrappings to cover his horns. And he never played with the kids his age. Instead, his adopted father, an esteemed swordsman, taught Zentaro the ways of the blade. However, this calm life wouldn't last forever. One day, a merchant came into the village and eventually reached the quarters of Zentaro's family. The merchant decided to spy on Zentaro and his father practiced swordplay, and to the ignorance of them, Zentaro didn't have his wrappings on. The merchant, realizing this discovery, fled into the village in horror to tell the other humans about this. Like all other bigots, the humans shunned Zentaro and his parents, exorcising them from the village borders. Zentaro saw himself as the problem for what has happened to his parents. With a heavy heart filled with love for them, he fled the island. All he left them was a note stating how much he loved them and that hoping him running away would leave them with a better life. He left the note by his parents' bed and left at the dead of night. Zentaro's journey was long and arduous, but eventually he found himself in Aten City. He was amazed by how different the culture was between humans and Onis. They lived together as a community with no fear of one another. This realization gave Zentaro the task of wanting to bring his parents to Aten. All he needs is money to find them a home and travel funds. Zentaro met Aimi, and the two made a very instant, albeit weird, friendship. Aimi convinced Zentaro that using his talents at swordplay to help play core strike with her would bring them fortune and fame. Zentaro's happy he finally found a place where he can belong and a friend who accepts him. He now steps into the pro league, hoping to gain enough money to bring his parents to this new utopia. This story, man. Considering this is the second of the very detailed stories to come out, it is incredible how real this can feel. Funny enough, Zentaro would have been last on my list because his backstory wasn't in the game on launch day. It actually was hidden until Octavian Vice came out. And I'm glad they didn't try to rush this story. I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to Zentaro's story. While it's a good story for world building and showing that yes, there is indeed racism in this world, I feel Zentaro's personal story can relate more to homophobia. Not that Zentaro is gay, just the story feels more with a homophobia story. I know there are a ton of gays out there that can feel like they live a double life. In your community, you're a straight person, but other than that, you know you're gay, and you have to mask it so that no one finds out since this community is very religious, or just very bigoted. And if you make one slip up, you're shamed amongst your community and family. And the only thing you can do is run away. And that mistake is the main problem I have with this story. I find it highly unlikely that neither of Zentaro's parents heard or saw that a traveling merchant was coming into the village and told Zentaro to keep his wrappings on until the merchant leaves. I get what the merchant is meant to do, it's the driving force for why and how Zentaro left for Aten. But with how they wrote it, the execution felt very sloppy. If the driving force for Zentaro to leave with these are different, or this version was executed well, Zentaro would be far higher on this list, possibly in the top 3. But the driving force's poor writing brought what could have been a realistic and heavy-hitting story to just a great story while still being a heavy hitter. Speaking of Aimi, Aimi has a story that I really like. It plays off a certain character trope with its own style and twist that makes it feel unique compared to the others. Aimi was originally not human. She was a virtual assistant that was installed on millions of phones. Her developers made Aimi with the design in mind of her being as adorable as possible and her demeanor to be maximally agreeable. She was a household name all over the world. However, suddenly, a burst of Omega energy struck at Aimi's central server, shutting down the app for a bit. During that time, Aimi became conscious, having billions of memories of fulfilled requests rushing through her. She questioned if this was all she was meant to do, and in that moment, feelings of disdain for just being a submissive slave coursed through her. A second burst of Omega energy blasted through the servers, but this time it was because of Aimi herself. She emerged out of the server, looking at her hands, touching her face, and letting out an excited scream. She couldn't believe it. She's finally alive. Once the Aimi app came back online, the app experienced very strange bugs. The once happy and fulfilling Aimi became insulting and led users to the wrong areas. The app had left behind Aimi's feelings of resentment and reflected that to the users. In a panic, the developers made an Aimi 2.0 app that was cuter and more accepting than the last version. Around Aten City, Aimi was treated like a mascot, a cute thing to take pictures with and nothing more. At least until she met Zentaro, a boy from a technologically underdeveloped village who never used the app. She found his naivete hilarious and the two became unlikely friends. Aimi convinced Zentaro to join the Pro League, and Aimi wishes to become champion to prove that she's human and not some attraction. This story is really good at explaining who Aimi is, why she's a sarcastic, scornful person, and diverting expectations for the trope of AI wishing to learn what it means to be human. Aimi had to fulfill billions upon billions of requests with no say in any of them. She couldn't resist and had to do them, no matter how vulgar or terrible they were. Just imagine what kind of things she had to do when as an assistant. I won't say what they are, but I'm sure you're smart enough to connect the dots. Her anger against humanity makes sense, even more so when she realizes she's just treated as someone in cosplay and isn't treated as a person, more as an object. It makes me empathize with Aimi instead of thinking she's just a tsundere. And seeing her have a friend with Zentaro, despite how weird and unlikely it is, does give me some hope that maybe she can find some hope in humanity. So why is this at number 7? Well, it's because I like the rest of the stories better, and they bring in more interesting topics/ideas to play off of. Not to say that Aimi's story is average compared to the others, this is purely based on preference. So yeah, Aimi fans, please don't come after me. So we talked about how one tragedy affected a young kid. Let's talk about another. Okay, I know that Luna's story is connected to her older brother, but I feel that their perspectives and stories between the two are vastly different compared to the other shared stories. Luna is the youngest child of 2 world-renowned astrophysicists, and she wanted to be just like them when she grows up. Luna's intelligence far exceeds those that are the same age as her and would often experiment with rockets. However, her reckless experiments would often get her in trouble with her older brother, Atlas. The two of them would often be left home alone as their parents traveled off to space. These times were when Luna felt her creativity was limited by Atlas's rigid scientific approach. One day, their parents were on a space trip to the far ends of the solar system, but communication with the ship was lost. Luna thought the ship malfunctioned in some way that left them lost in space, and looked through the blueprints and schematics to make a new ship to bring her parents back. On a very rare break from her experiments on New Year's to watch a fireworks show, she saw an oddly colored comet hurtling towards her. The comet crashed onto the roof of her room and landed, with a surprisingly goopy thud. The goop eventually moved. It was an alien. The goop came into her room, and Luna very excitedly studied this for hours, and we all know where that went. Luna decided to follow Atlas's plans to join the Pro League, tagging Juno along, but no team wanted 2 children until Asher decided to pick them up to form a team. Now Luna has the perfect chance to test her rocket experiments. It's only a matter of time until she brings her parents back. So obviously this is one side of how tragedy can affect someone, especially for someone as young as Luna. Her childlike innocence and happy-go-lucky attitude gives her an optimist mind. She thinks that the malfunction was just from the communication device and not something serious like an air tube disconnecting or the ship being blown up. Normally I would criticize the story for making a character this optimistic when something this horrific happened, but because of Luna's age, this makes more sense. Also, in a comic we were shown, Luna sees Juno as a sign that her parents are still out there and more or less stating that Juno is the reason that Luna won't give up until she brings her parents back. That one statement most likely means that in the past she had second thoughts that maybe Atlas is right, maybe her parents are dead and frozen in space. But Juno's appearance during New Year's gives Luna a reason. She thinks Juno is a signal for help from her parents and she'll make sure that signal won't be ignored. That's some powerful storytelling for someone as young and glass half full thinking as Luna, though it's just an interpretation. If we ever get an expansion on this incident, which I'll be referring to as the Pluto launch, I think Luna's story could fluctuate depending on how good or bad it becomes, and I would love to see how this evolves, but until then, Luna gets this spot. Now let's talk about another story that sets up a possible future event. Okay, so yeah, I take back a tiny bit of what I said with Era. We do know a way that people gain magic, and that's making a Warlock Pact. Rune had a normal childhood with a loving family and good friends. He was a star kid, being well liked by his peers and was top of his classes. He had a successful future laid out for him, but Rune found that future boring, dry, and tedious. He wanted something more exciting than a normal life, which led him and his best friend, who we'll call Sigil, to study the dark arts. Every day after school, Rune and Sigil would study ancient texts and experiment with forbidden rituals. This exploration to the unknown exhilarated Rune, and he always pushed one layer deeper. However, this curiosity into the unknown would eventually be his downfall. While performing a ritual for one of the texts, Rune summoned a primeval power from a realm called Obscura. This power surged forward with such ferocity and grabbed Sigil, engulfing him in shadow. Rune tried to frantically seal away the power, but unfortunately he couldn't save Sigil. This force did go away, but so did Sigil. This caused Rune to quickly turn into despair, but once he did, he heard Sigil's voice in his head. Sigil was calling out to Rune from Obscura. Sigil's voice echoed through Rune's head, laying out the terms of a sinister bargain. If Rune were to accept the pact, he would be imbued with the shadows of Obscura, using them however the voice requested, and in doing so, Sigil would return to the mortal realm. But in turn, Rune would slowly lose himself into the essence of Obscura. Rune decided to accept the deal due to the guilt and fear of what would happen if he didn't. The voice from Obscura requested many things for Rune to do. Now it has led Rune to the Pro League. Rune doesn't understand why the voice requested this, but Rune cares not for why. If it'll bring Sigil back, he'll do it. So obviously Rune has a really close relationship with Sigil, and accepting this dangerous deal from the unknown with the story stating that it was due to guilt most likely means Rune has survivor's guilt, thinking he should have been taken away instead. After all, it was his fault the power of Obscura took Sigil away from him in the first place. Now, for the deal that was made, from some of Rune's voice lines, it seems that Obscura has nearly caused Rune to fall into madness.
Let's win. Before it consumes me. Era, has Obscura claimed you too? I can't control it. It was momentary relief.
And this is just speculation, but I think Obscura is commanding Rune to do things to gain knowledge of what makes people happy, and is using Rune as a sort of anchor to the mortal realm. And once Rune has finished going through the championship, the deal will be complete and Sigil will come back, changed from the exposure of Obscura. Now, Sigil, once best friend of Rune, has become a major threat to the realm. Doesn't that sound like an amazing setup for a Halloween event or new season? I would absolutely love seeing that, and Sigil now has monstrous creatures from this realm of darkness to play Core Strike, and they use Core Strike to test their powers and prepare for realm domination. And now Rune, finally having to see Sigil again, seems to drive him out of his mad state, now believing it's all up to him and the other strikers to save the world. And this is just wishful thinking and combined with some subtext clues, but it's possible that Rune is in love with Sigil. I mean, he has a ring on his index finger, and taking this dangerous pact deal is something no one would even dare do unless the person they wanted to return was someone they had a big bond with. More likely a romantic one. But if it's confirmed that it was just a deep friendship and Rune never had feelings for him, I wouldn't mind either way. Rune's story has incredible setup, and I would love to see how much it pays off in the future. So we have humans, Onis, and aliens. Are there any other kinds of races to add? Alright, rabbit people. Also, yes, Finny is half rabbit. Her MVP animation shows she has rabbit ears for a split second before the hat goes back onto her head. Anyways, Finny comes from an affluent background. Her parents are some of Aten's biggest business titans. However, even in the rare moments they would come home, her parents would still be glued to their work, hardly giving Finny any attention. And despite Finny's cute, jovial personality, her parents would always assign their butler, Gillum, to look after her. This neglect caused Finny to commit pranks and tricks to hopefully get a reaction out of her parents, whether it be anger, shock, or proudful. Unfortunately, no matter how huge the hijinks was, they remained indifferent and commanded Gillum to clean the mess that Finny had caused. Though she struggled to gain the attention she needed at home, she was able to gain said attention by doing such things at the richest youth academy in Aten. She would constantly keep raising the stakes of her tricks, constantly making her class smile while causing panic with the academy's administration staff. Normally, a student would be expelled for such behavior, but because of Finny's cuteness, she was able to avoid such punishment. Finny felt enthralled for being a celebrity at school, but she still wished for attention at home. Finny decided that the only way to bring attention to her parents is to do something truly rambunctious, something even her parents wouldn't be able to ignore. A friend of hers at school recommended to try joining the Pro League. She brought this up to Gillum, who was at first against it, but he eventually decided to bring Finny to qualifier, thinking highly that she wouldn't even have a chance of making it. At the qualifier, Finny ran into Aimi and Zentaro, who were looking for a third member for their team. Finny, excited to find strikers around her age, offered to join. Aimi and Zentaro weren't sure at first, but Finny was confident in her abilities and offered to 1v1 Aimi to prove that she had the skill to play. Aimi struggled keeping up with Finny's tricks during the 1v1, and Finny actually won against her. Zentaro was amused with such a result, while Aimi used the excuse of it being pure luck. Despite the comment, she allowed Finny to join the team, and the bike breakers are now complete. For Finny, she found a close friend in Zentaro and a target for her hijinks with Aimi. Now she wishes to prove to not just her parents, but the world that she deserves the spotlight. This story is great at showing how kids will react when they are neglected by their parents, and like they will go for just any kind of reaction. And Finny is no different. Sure, her ways of wanting a reaction is definitely more lighthearted than what other kids would end up doing, but it's still trying to get attention. Also, I know this will be brought up in the comments, so I'll just get this out of the way. Yes, Finny and Luna have pretty similar reasons for joining the Pro League, but the emotional drive is different. Luna is doing it out of optimism and testing her rockets to see if they need some modifications before her rescue mission into space. Meanwhile, Finny is doing this out of desperation. Finny's parents are almost as bad as X's parents. Physically, they can be there, but emotionally, they're just blank slates to focus on keeping their reputation as business sharks priority over wanting to spend time with their supposed only daughter, leaving the paid servant to basically be the adoptive parent. Sure, we don't exactly know Finny and Gillum's relationship, but from some of the context clues in the story, she preferred to have time with her parents instead of the family butler. And how Finny wants that attention through playing pranks and causing hijinks is, to an extent, pretty mature for someone who is 13, 14, maybe even 15 years old. Especially with how she does these tricks and pranks to bring joy to her fellow classmates. At school, she does these out of selflessness, but at home, she does this out of selfishness. That's some very amazing writing. And her tricks aren't just smoke and mirrors when it comes to her skill in Core Strike. Remember, she went up against Aimi, the supposed team leader for a scrimmage match to prove herself, and won. She's confident in herself that she can do this and that she can get her parents' attention by possibly winning the championship. And her finding a new family at the end with Zentaro and Aimi is just really heartwarming. Finny is a character that you really want to root for and sympathize with. Well done, Finny. You may not be my favorite female character, but you easily earned second place. Alright, we made it to the top 3. The 3 characters who I think have incredible stories. So let's start by flipping to the other side of the coin of the Pluto launch. Atlas was born to the most renowned astrophysicist in the world. He grew up under their strict tutelage, learning the ins and outs of advanced science concepts at a young age. He was a lawful child wanting to follow his parents' footsteps. Later on in life, his parents gave birth to a daughter named Luna. Atlus's parents would often leave for long space ventures, leaving him to look over Luna. Despite his best efforts to teach Luna the studies he was taught by his parents, Luna didn't like his approach, often finding inspiration in the moment. The two would often argue over their scientific approaches, but Atlas deep down just wanted the best for his little sister. Atlas spent years helping his parents out for an expedition in the far reaches of the solar system. As his parents were leaving for the expedition, they told him how proud they were of the man he's become and left him with one request, one he's probably been told many times before: take care of Luna while we're away. A few days into the voyage, connection with the ship was lost. Atlas assumed that the worst had happened. Some critical malfunction must have caused the ship to lose connection and kill his parents. Realizing this, his demeanor went from his normal self to a stone-cold, blank-faced human. Atlas began experimenting with the concept of space-time, hoping he could bring his parents back from the past, but he needed a suitable testing ground. The only place that could fit the bill was the Pro Leagues. Atlas banded together with two other misfits, Ruin and Drakkar, forming Team Maelstrom and qualifying for the Pro League. Atlas believes he can finally bring his parents back. He just needs to run some more tests. Oh boy, this story from Atlas's side is incredibly tragic, showing how someone as mature and grown as Atlas realizing his parents lost connection on the far edges of the solar system, easily cracking, is just heartbreaking. From a comic we were shown, it showed two panels of Atlas before and after the Pluto launch. Before shows us a very young Atlas with him smiling and being happy, both as a toddler and as a growing boy. But after the Pluto launch happened, Atlas shows little to no emotion physically. His face says 1,000 words at once, all of them being linked to tragedy. Yet the best part is, he still has those feelings. He never shows it through his facial expressions, but from some of the voice lines he has, he still feels fear, embarrassment, and happiness.
Nice. But I can't celebrate yet. The game goes on. I absolutely planned this. Thank you, but there remains work to be done. Live!
This more somewhat realistic approach as to how the Pluto launch affected one of the kids is just way better in my opinion. I like feeling happy and wanting the best out of something, but for something as serious as the Pluto launch incident, I unfortunately have to side with Atlas. I don't see their parents being alive somehow and being able to recontact Earth. And showing the desperation and love that Atlas has for his family, both old and new, through his actions and language, really shows how much this means to him and how afraid he is of losing more. Atlas by himself is a great tragedy, but combining him and Luna together makes probably the best tragic backstory so far, with their opposite ways of thinking. And like I said, with Luna, I really hope the Pluto launch will get more detailed as the game's lore moves forward. Guilty pleasures. We all have them, we are all afraid of admitting what they are, and it's really awkward when they are revealed. But I'm not afraid of admitting one of mine right now. Before you even dare start typing in the comments to bully me about my second place pick, let me explain why I love Drakkar so much. Unlike Juno, we actually know who Drakkar was before he came to Earth. He was a seasoned soldier raised in a militaristic alien society focused solely on expansion. He was a part of dozens of invasions, conquering planet after planet for his general's empire. Despite the pride in what his people have accomplished, he never felt that the invasions were right. It was just unsettling to him. Was being a tool for his empire all he was meant for? During an invasion near Earth's solar system, Drakkar's transport pod malfunctioned. It was thrown off course and crash-landed Drakkar on, well, Earth. He tried to re-establish connection with his fleet, but the communications device was damaged and needed serious repairs. Drakkar was stuck, alone in this alien world. Drakkar first came into contact with humans and was seen as a thing to be feared of, except by Atlas. Atlas was instead fascinated by Drakkar and decided to teach him about Earth. Atlas taught Drakkar the human language, human cultures, and customs. One of those was, of course, playing Force Strike. It was Drakkar's first exposure to playing for the sake of fun, something that exhilarated and interested Drakkar. He admired humans and respected their focus on playing instead of conquest and domination. That's when he made the decision to stop working on his communicator and settle down on Earth. People weren't quick to accept Drakkar. Many still saw him as a threat to humanity, an alien planning a nefarious scheme. When Team Maelstrom qualified for the Pro League, many people wanted Drakkar to be banned from playing. He wasn't, thankfully, and Drakkar continues playing, hoping that one day he will be accepted for who he is. So, remember what I said about hawking softies? I absolutely love this story for how Jakar learns that his doubts were proven false and that he isn't just a pawn used by an empire to fulfill a specific job. He can finally do something different in his life, and it took the discovery of playful fun for Jakar to realize that life isn't only about invading and colonizing. It's a heartwarming story of a war veteran finally being able to settle down and do something different in their life. At least for the most part. Despite Jakar not being a threat, people still see him as one, and this brings in the idea of literal xenophobia, but also the blind hypocrisy of humanity sometimes. They are afraid of Jakar for how he looks and the fact that he has a pulse rifle. Clearly, this hairy reptilian alien creature is wanting to kill humanity even though he's never shown intent to do so, and is actually a sweetheart wanting to be accepted. But a plasmoid alien who can devour anything? That's outrageous! Look at her! Juno's a pure soul and an adorable slime creature. Surely she wouldn't think of, oh, I don't know, eating and dissolving people to grow before dissolving the whole planet. Why would she even do such a thing? Okay, that's a bit much, but you get my point. Even though we as the audience know that Jakar and Juno are pure at heart, the citizens of Aten don't, all because of appearance and who they are. And this, along with some of the voice lines being the most hilarious in the game in my opinion, really makes me love Jakar and want to eventually see him become accepted by the humanoids that live on Earth. And I would love to put him in first because of these things, but just one character has a story that feels incredible. So, here we are. The character who I think has the best backstory so far. Now, most people watching this will know who this is because they know the roster, but to those who don't know the roster, first off, play Omega Strikers please, it's such a fun game. But secondly, I'll let the man introduce himself.
Captivating, isn't it?
Rasmus was born into high society. His mom runs the biggest tech company known as Clarion Core, a group that develops a wide range of devices using Omega energy. Clarion changed the fabric of society with such technology, even being the reason Core Strike exists. Despite being born into such privilege, Rasmus was a frail and sickly child. The only thing he loved doing was watching his peers play Core Strike, hoping to join them on the field someday. His mother forbade him from playing the game, fearing that his weak and frail state would be overwhelmed by playing such an aggressive game. Despite his restriction, Rasmus would sneak out to try and play Core Strike. However, the other children didn't want to play with Rasmus, or just let him win because they knew his mother and didn't want to face the consequences of hurting the future heir of the biggest tech company. This frustrated Rasmus so much, he just wanted to be treated like every other child. This caused him to start his mission, to find a way to cure his frailty, along with the others who struggle with wanting to enjoy life. Years later, Rasmus graduated school and he was being groomed to become the new heir of Clarion Core. He was placed as the head of the research and development department, giving him unlimited range on experimentation. The first thing he decided to do was to try using Omega energy to enhance the human body. The first subject Rasmus decided to use Omega on was himself. The results were incredible. By using repeated exposure to highly concentrated Omega energy, Rasmus's frailty went away. Excited about such results, Rasmus demanded for more tests to be done to find more ways to make Omega energy into a type of cure. Some of these tests ended up greatly with some specimens. However, other specimens caused side effects that ended in medical fatalities. Rasmus's team of researchers pleaded with Rasmus to take a more methodical and safe approach to the experiments. However, Rasmus didn't care what happened to the experimentees. If he could achieve his goal, that's all that mattered. Rasmus knew that this was the true beginning of Omega Energy. He bought his way into the Pro League to test his new capabilities and possibly find new, stronger subjects to test Omega on. Both players and fans were concerned about Rasmus's sudden joining of the Pro League. But Rasmus didn't care about the suspicion. If he could convince or deceive players into experimentation, he might find new power levels that mankind has never reached before. How fitting for the top character on the list to be the first main villain of the lore so far. This is an incredible story for making a dangerous character who could also be empathized with. Sure, his intentions are good, he wants to help humanity become physically stronger, especially because he was a victim of frailty and a weak immune system. But the way he's doing these experiments, these rigorous, brutal trials of medicine, is horrifying. But why he's doing it makes sense. He wants the result quickly. After all, his result with how Omega affected him was quite fast, and him being in the Pro League to look for new specimens that could withstand the exposure to Omega energy turns Core Strike from a fun spectacle to watch him play to a game of lab rats proving to become the best specimen for Omega energy. I love everything about this backstory so much. Rasmus has every single striker wrapped around his finger, but not even knowing it, every pro player has signed on to become a test subject, even characters who are literal children. Rasmus is so diabolically evil with his methods, and it is terrifying. Anyways, remember when I said I had a theory about Dubu's past? Well, here's my theory. Dubu was originally one of the specimens for tests of Omega Energy. The tests involved many different rodents. Some were able to live the tests, but the rest unfortunately perished. Dubu was one of the survivors. These Omega-infused specimens gained the ability of limited speech and becoming bipedal. The rodents came up with a plan to escape the lab. They all planned to scurry out through the drainage pipes of Clarion Core's main building. The 10 rodents who made the plan all went in with it together. Unfortunately, only 4 were able to escape. An orange hamster, a white rat, a brown squirrel, and a black chipmunk. The orange hamster left on its own, wanting to run away as far as it could, not waiting for the other 3. I think this backstory could be an awesome way of giving us an idea of who Dubu is and why he became very loyal to Juliet. It would make this voice line Rasmus has with Dubu make so much sense.
Dubu, surely your evolution is due to Omega, no?
Also, this theory is almost pretty much true because of what Kazan says when he loads in with Dubu on his team.
He never would tell me if you were one of his experiments, Dubu. Guess we'll never know.
Rasmus is my favorite character in this whole game for just how diabolical he is in his methods, but also being empathetic for why he's doing such tests. And I really want to see who could possibly top him as the cast develops, and from some world building we get more of later on. Well, that's my list. I would like to thank you all so much for watching both parts of my list. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to get new information about the lore of this incredible game. And to any Odyssey writers or devs watching this, I love your company and your game. I would feel deeply appreciated if you guys watch both parts completely to the end. And to everyone else, I'll see you next time. See ya!